Hello again, biologists. In this screencast, we'll start chapter 14 and talk about natural selection and adaptation. In this chapter's case study, we'll look at a type of bacteria called MRSA. MRSA has developed antibiotic resistance and has demonstrated natural selection, adaptation, and evolution. MRSA is one strain of bacteria of the species Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus is more commonly known as staph. Remember that bacteria are prokaryotes. They lack a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. There are many varieties or strains of Staphylococcus aureus. Some of the strains cause infection, some of them do not. Some infectious strains of Staphylococcus aureus are drug-resistant, MRSA being one of them. Staph can spread from person to person in a number of ways. First, staph can spread through contact with an infected person or a contaminated object. Secondly, it can spread through the inhalation of infected respiratory droplets when an infected person coughs or sneezes. MRSA is one strain of staph and stands for Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. MRSA is an infectious bacterium, meaning that it is disease-causing and can spread from person to person. Methicillin is an antibiotic related to penicillin and was once effective against staph. MRSA is resistant to methicillin, and as a result, it's difficult to treat MRSA infections with antibiotics. MRSA infections kill about 19,000 people in the United States per year. The photo on this slide shows a person with a MRSA infection on his lip. MRSA infections are often mistaken for spider bites. The photos on this slide show the difference between a spider bite and a MRSA infection. This infographic summarizes how staph can be spread from person to person. It also describes how staph can cause mild skin infections like pimples and boils, but MRSA infections can cause much more severe symptoms. Over time, MRSA developed antibiotic resistance through beneficial or good mutations. MRSA adversely affects people with developing or weakened immune systems. As a result, children and the elderly are at greater risk of severe infection. Ricky Lanetti was a football player on the Lycoming College football team in Pennsylvania. He was already weakened by the flu when he contracted a MRSA infection through a pimple on his rear end. The infection eventually took his life. Just to review, antibiotics are chemicals that either kill bacteria or slow down their growth. Antibiotics work by interfering with the function of essential bacterial cell structures. They target what is unique to bacterial cells, and as a result, they leave our cells alone. Because antibiotics work specifically against bacteria, they are useless against viruses. Penicillin and methicillin fall into a class of broad-spectrum antibiotics called B-lactam antibiotics. Broad spectrum refers to their being able to combat a number of different bacteria. Beta-lactam refers to their chemical structure. Beta-lactam antibiotics work by inhibiting the synthesis of prokaryotic cell walls. Because beta-lactam antibiotics interfere with bacterial cell wall synthesis, bacterial cell walls do not form properly, causing water to rush in and burst the cell through osmosis. Bacteria often develop resistance to beta-lactam antibiotics by synthesizing a protein enzyme called beta-lactamase. Beta-lactamase will attack and break down any antibiotics. The diagram on the left shows how beta-lactam antibiotics can cause bacterial cells to burst. The diagram on the right shows the structure of beta-lactamase. This infographic goes into a little more detail about how beta-lactam antibiotics can interfere with This infographic goes into a little more detail about how beta-lactam antibiotics can interfere with bacterial cell wall synthesis and cause bacterial cells to rupture. Evolution is change over time, and through evolution, bacterial strains have developed antibiotic resistance and have been able to survive antibiotic treatment. Antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria proliferate through asexual reproduction. In bacterial asexual reproduction, one parent cell will split into two daughter cells through mitosis. This is also called binary fission. Binary refers to creating two products. Fission is the opposite of fusion and means splitting apart. This infographic summarizes how bacteria reproduce asexually through binary fission, which is a form of mitosis. Over time, bacteria can acquire new alleles, some of which may lead to antibiotic resistance. Bacteria acquire new alleles through one of two ways. The first is random mutation within the bacterial cell. The second is gene transfer. Bacteria can exchange pieces of DNA between one another. The photo on this slide shows gene transfer happening. DNA is being exchanged through the structures that are connecting them called pili. This infographic summarizes how bacteria acquire new alleles and create genetic diversity through mutation and gene transfer. This infographic shows how bacteria can get new DNA or new alleles from their environment, from viruses, and from other bacteria. Evolution focuses on populations over individuals. A population is a group of organisms of the same species living together in the same geographic area. It's important to understand that individuals themselves do not evolve. Populations do. An entire population can change or evolve when some traits are favored over others. For example, a drug-resistant trait will allow populations of bacteria that have it to survive while other populations perish. The photo on this slide shows the sea lion population of San Francisco. Populations that are genetically diverse are best equipped to change or evolve. They'll have alleles that may be valuable in resisting diseases, pests, and other stresses. Genetic diversity is a buffer against change. Remember that alleles are different versions of a gene. Over time, allele frequencies or prevalence will fluctuate. The environment will favor some alleles over others. As a result, some allele frequencies increase and other allele frequencies decrease. When allele frequencies change, we define this as evolution.